Well, folks, we made it to season 7. Welcome to the Vulnerability Time podcast. I am your host, Josias Abriel, and published author. Speaking of published author, before the episode starts, make sure to go check out my books. They're available on Amazon, and the link is in the episode description below. Go ahead, get you some healing. One's a poetry book about overcoming pain and trauma and stuff like that, and then the other one's a self-awareness interactive journal notebook. So get you some healing. You're worth it. Another thing that you're worth all the love in the world. You're worth all the healing in the world, and I'm glad that you're here with us today to heal together. You are loved, you are valuable. This is your sign. Alrighty, enjoy the episode. Bye, folks. Alrighty. Okay, everyone. So, don't you love the new pre-recorded intro that I have, folks? Okay, so we are here today with Lisa, and folks, we'll be talking about conversations about the things we are afraid to talk about. But first, before we get into that and whatever that may mean, um, Lisa, let us get to know you. Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yes, so tell us a little bit about you. Any work that you have, any work that you do, credentials, all of that, anything you want to share with us.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, mom of two grown daughters, 25 and 28, live here just north of Boston, which is home for me, which has always been home for me. Live here with my husband. We've been together literally forever since we were 17 years old.
Oh,
So,
that's so
yeah,
cute.
yeah, rival towns, but we got past that. Which so we're good now. So we both work from home, which is an amazing luxury that we appreciate every day. He's upstairs, I'm down here in my office, and I create content. I create lots and lots of content in a very specific space. I mean, it's in the mental health space, but it's also in a really unique niche within that space, which is suicide awareness and prevention. And I do a lot of talking about grief and loss, especially as it applies to suicide.
Mhm.
And that's what I do now in the world. I'm an advocate. I do a lot of work trying to create awareness and help people find resources. That's been a big, big project of mine. I created a platform that I know you and I are going to talk a little bit about called the Help Hub last year. It's about a year old, almost a year old, for people to find resources no matter what community you're in. I have another book coming out, which is all about my story that I'm sure you and I'll also talk about today. And that's really what I do. I'm also on the crisis lifelines. I'm a crisis counselor with the Trevor Project, and it's coming up on my 3-year anniversary on the lifeline. So I've been doing that for quite a while. I do a lot of volunteer work with Samaritans, managing grief groups specific to survivors of suicide loss. So I'm kind of like all over the place, but a lot of it just really focuses on doing work in the mental health space.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's so amazing. So, Lisa, tell us so Help Hub. Um, so is there a way folks can how can folks access them? Is there like a link? Because if there is a link, folks, it will be in the episode description below. Go ahead and check that out. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about what Help Hub is.
Yeah, I love talking about the Help Hub. So you can find it by going to thehelphub.co, and you can find all of our socials. You can find our YouTube channel. You can find the podcast. I actually also have my own podcast that I co-host with another woman who happens to be a survivor of suicide loss. I'm a survivor of multiple suicide. Well, she's a survivor of an attempt, I should say, and I'm the one who's the survivor of multiple suicide losses. So we come at the survivor topic from
Mhm.
a million different angles
Perspectives.
and
Yeah.
perspectives. So that is something you can find in the Help Hub. And what really defines this platform is what you see when you first arrive on the platform. It's really just a visual, it's a grid with, I think now we have 18 different categories where people in any community, whether you're part of the Latinx community or AAPI or BIPOC or queer community, elderly, veterans, a parent, and you want to find either resources, maybe it's crisis support resources, maybe it's mindfulness resources. You want resources that are specific to your unique needs as a human, which might be different from someone in a different community. You just click on the tab that represents the community that you're looking for help with, and that will take you to a list of curated resources that will link you with one click to that organization. You'll see what the organization is, how they can help you, and you can immediately get to that organization. And so that's really kind of the foundational piece of what the whole Help Hub is built on. It's a site that's designed to give people access to free resources that have already been vetted so that when you're in that state of mind where you're in crisis or you're dysregulated and you're looking for help and your headspace is so chaotic that you can't even think about taking a glass of water for yourself, let
Right.
alone doing research to find out what you need.
Right.
I've done that. I've done that for you, and I've put it in a place
Yeah.
that says, okay, I'm part of the LGBTQ community and I know I need crisis support right this minute, but I don't know where to go. You click on that tab and it will take you to everything that you might need
Mhm.
in that moment to support your needs and so on for all the communities. So that's what people will find. I also have an incredibly extensive archive of columns and articles that I've written over the years. All of my past books, they're really parenting related books are there as well, but the book I'm finishing at the moment that'll be out in the spring of 2026 will be there as well. So it's really just a clearinghouse for crisis support, resources, tools, and content to help you manage your overall wellness.
I love that because, creating a space for safety, community support, um, that can be an act of love. And so thank you for loving the world. And I think it's extremely important as well because, there are people out there, you know what I mean, that want to find these resources, but the ones they found, maybe they can't afford it, and things of that nature. So it's great to know that the free resources are out there because I knew that they were out there. I just didn't know where they were. But I was aware and I was always comforted knowing that they're out there. So it's good to know that, um, there's another way to access these free resources and support. And I love that. So, folks, it will be in the episode description below. Um, send to anyone if they're needing it, if you don't know how to help, I mean, get the resources out there. um I mean, yeah, I just think that's really, really, really beautiful. It's
Thank you.
something that I will be sharing with my students should they need it. So I'll add it to my syllabus because I'm an instructor. So I'll add it to my syllabus, just in case.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I think it bears mentioning too, one of the pieces of the Help Hub, one of the components that I didn't mention is the
Mhm.
toolkit section. I've
Oh,
been building up and curating a toolkit. I mean, I'm a crisis counselor, so I've been trained on how to do a risk assessment on someone if you think that someone is considering harming themselves or someone else. I understand how to do 5 4 3 2 1 grounding techniques to calm yourself when you're dysregulated. I understand the things to ask or not to ask when someone's grieving or when someone's struggling. And so I took the time and put these things into infographics that are super easy to download or share or print or just read online, keep them on your phone. So if you have to have a really hard conversation with somebody you care about who might not be okay, and you're like, I don't know what to say, I don't know where to
right.
start, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I have tools that can actually help you navigate those kinds of conversations, or maybe it's somebody you know. So I if people are listening to our conversation and they're curious about the Help Hub, I want to make sure that people outside understand that they're going to find a toolkit
Mhm.
there of free resources that they can utilize or share that exist in a place where they will always be available.
Fabulous. That's wonderful because that is huge. Sometimes someone doesn't know what to say. Even times I don't know what to say. What I usually say is, how can I best be of support to you? And if they don't know, I'm just like, I'm here to listen.
That's all you can do, and that's
Mhm.
honestly, that is the best thing in the world that you
Yeah,
can say.
exactly. Yeah, because like when I tell my friends when I, am going through it, I say I wouldn't even know what to say to me.
Mm,
So
yeah.
you just being present and you just listening means the world. It means the world. So I love that you have that. Yeah, so that link will be in the episode description below, folks. And we'll also mention it at the end as well, just in case yeah. So, okay. So, Lisa, so conversations that we are afraid to talk about,
Mhm.
what does that mean? What are those conversations? And let's have them.
I love that you're asking, and I love that you wanna have that kind of conversation here. It's my favorite thing to do is to go deep into these conversations. So, first of all, I mean, we've already kind of touched on one of them, which is to talk about suicide and say the
Mhm,
word out in the open because it's a thing that happens, and it's a thing that happens every 11 minutes. It's a thing that happens to over 700,000 people every year,
mhm,
and the crazy statistic is that for every one of those 700,000 people a year around the world that take their life, 135 people are impacted.
mhm,
So when you do that simple math, it means that 94 million people a year are somehow touched by suicide. And yet
mhm.
nobody's out there in the mainstream really talking about it
Right.
because people are so afraid. It's so messy. It's so scary. It's
Mhm,
so triggering. And yeah, it is all those things. I would
mhm,
never sit here and say that it isn't all those things.
mhm.
But it's a fact of life. It's a thing that happens,
Right.
and I think we can all agree that we'd like to see it happen less. So the
Right.
more we normalize having conversations about these things, the less apt someone is going to be to feel isolated and alone, like they can't share, and they'll get the help that they need. So talking about things like suicide is absolutely right on top as far as I'm concerned. Talking about just our general mental health and wellness and the fact
Mhm.
that you might not be okay.
Right.
And I know that that's such a common phrase right now. It's such a like a buzz phrase right now, but it has to be, and it's so important because so many people are still stuck on that idea that if they say they're not okay, now they're weak, now they're not
Right.
capable, oh, you're
Mhm,
not that resilient, oh, you can't handle your life, you're less than. And people are put in a box
mhm,
because of that. And
mhm.
that's really unfair.
Right.
And so that's something we need to be talking about.
Mhm,
We also need to be talking about grief. I
mhm,
mean, there isn't
mhm.
one of us who has not gone through some kind of grief. And I
Right.
don't just mean the kind that you go through when you lose a human being.
Right.
That's obviously the one that we think about
Mhm,
most often, but
mhm,
that's not the only one that exists. Maybe you're one of the lucky ones and you've never lost somebody in your life.
mhm,
And for that you should be incredibly grateful, but the sad reality is that eventually you will.
mhm.
Maybe you haven't yet. Maybe you've lost a relationship. Maybe
Right.
you've lost a job. Maybe you've lost a home.
A
Maybe you've
pet.
lost a pet,
The
a
loss of a
friendship.
new norm, the loss of
Yep.
of what was
And
normal to you. Yeah.
an
Mhm,
identity, or maybe you're older now and you are retired and you've lost that part of your life that worked every day and
mhm,
that was contributing in a professional way. So there are so many different things that we can lose. And again, that's something that we need to be normalizing, that
yeah,
we all go through these feelings of grief and sadness and change and loss, but when we don't talk about it, we're all isolated in our own little individual pockets, playing these same narratives on thought loops over and over in our heads, and we're not progressing with them, we're not healing from them, we're not sharing our experiences. So when we do that with things like mental health and mental illness and grief and loss, and then all of a sudden we're changing the game. All
mhm,
of a sudden we're kind of leveling that playing field to the point where, okay, now it's not taboo, now it's not wrong, now it's not
mhm.
shameful, and now we can just kind of get rid of all that, can I say bullshit?
Of course, it's vulnerability time.
Oh my God, it's vulnerable. That's so exciting that I can say get rid of the bullshit because
Yes.
that's what it really is. And then when you do that
Mhm,
and you kind of break through to the core, then you're doing the work.
mhm,
Then you're focusing on what's important and you don't have to worry about all of those other pieces that are irrelevant to begin with, like stigma and shame, that keep you from dealing with the problem at hand. So that's the answer to my that's the best answer to your question that my brain can give you.
Yeah, I love, there's so many things that I love that you said. Oh my gosh. So yes, stigma. Things die in stigma. Stigma is such a epidemic. It's insane. Like stigma, it traps people, pushes people into corners. It blinds people, it invalidates people. Stigma does so many things. Stigma is just a bunch of fear and not knowing and things like that. And stigma doesn't do good for anyone. Stigma just tries to brush things under the rug. But folks, we see that that doesn't work. Like things need to be addressed, because if you brush something under the rug, it's still there and it's not really going anywhere, and it's kind of like it's still there. And something that I love that you said, I want to go back a little bit to the statistics of, suicide. Folks, I know you've heard me say this multiple times, but if you're new or haven't heard it, um, so in America, um, currently, there are more female-born citizens than male-born citizens. Mind you, before I go further, I want to recognize the intersex population. Folks, if you don't know what intersex is, those are individuals, there's millions of us that are born both or born neither. Like
Mm.
out of the womb, born both male and female, or born neither male or female. So that out of the womb, no surgery, um in over 18, like no, like literally, like out of the womb born. And we just don't talk about it. It's not taught in schools. We're just taught there's male female, but that is not true, and that has never been true. And it used to be common, but now, you know, things that it's not taught about. But anyways, so I want to recognize that community and say that you are seen. All right. Okay. So but statistically speaking, I don't know the statistics on intersex, but I know the statistics on, you know, um there are more female born citizens in America than male born citizens in America. More female born. However, men make up on average 76% of suicides.
Hmm.
And within 5 to 10 years, it's calculated to be um, over 80%. So that statistics huge. All right, huge. There are more women in America than men, but men make up well over the majority, and it's growing. All right, so that, yeah, folks. So talk about stigma. I'm sure, you know to better like individualize their stories. I'm sure it's very complex. I'm sure, everyone has unique intersectionality and things like that. However, I can say stigma is definitely a reality for many. I'm not saying for all, I don't know all, but I do know stigma does make such an impact, especially in regards to mental health and in regards to suicide. Now if it's someone dying of cancer, we talk about that. We can talk about, you know, the physical body deteriorating. We can talk about diabetes, but when something is mental, more quote unquote unseen, um, it's stigmatized. Even though mental health, it's all around us, it's within us. You don't have to necessarily be mentally ill to have mental health. I was just like, it is a state of it is we all have a brain. We all have therefore mental health, and some days it can be better than others and things of that nature. So I love that Lisa, is advocating for it to be talked about, because obviously things need to also be learned, but it starts somewhere. There needs to be discussion first. There needs to be that yeah, it needs to be talked about, because yes, knowledge is power, but also acknowledge is power. It starts
Right.
somewhere. It starts somewhere. um
Well, stigma is
yeah,
ignorance.
yes, ignorance, yes. Mm-hmm.
stigma is rooted in
Uh-huh.
ignorance in most
It's the root.
cases. I would say in all
I would
cases.
say that too.
Which
Mhm.
is why that ties right into knowledge is power, because when you're really understanding something for what it really is, like for instance, mental illness, you understand that
The
we
complexities
shouldn't
of
be,
it.
yes, we shouldn't be viewing it in any different way than we would a heart attack or cancer or lung disease, or it is a product of an illness,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
depression is a product of that illness. Anxiety and suicide, they're all products of depression, which are products of mental illness, and they need to be treated and acknowledged and accepted and validated in the same way that you would somebody who died in a car crash or had a heart attack or died of cancer. It's no different.
Exactly. Exactly. And I had thought about it and I was like, it is an illness. It is a disease. Um, Cancer is an illness. It is a disease. I've been told, "Oh, just be happy." When I first spoke up about depression, um, what if we were to say that to someone who has cancer? Oh, just be happy. I mean,
Hmm.
you wouldn't, you wouldn't. One is more accepted than the other, and I'm glad to hear and to know and to see in society that mental illness is being more talked about more. Um, Unfortunately, what does break my heart, it's kind of bittersweet because I'm glad it's being talked about, but some situations it's talked about quote unquote too late. When something actually manifests physically, whether that's suicide, whether that's, you know, a crime or things like that, and so it's kind of bittersweet because I'm like, see, this could have been prevented. This could have been prevented. It could have been prevented, by just simply, if the child is coming to the parent and saying, I'm depressed, that parent saying, well, I mean, I'm not saying all parents know what to do, but what I was told is, you're not depressed. You're too young to be depressed. You don't even know what depressed is. And I'm no shame to parents that I get it. Like, that's part of some people's culture. That's their upbringing, different generations, whatever. But I'm saying the point that I'm trying to make, folks, is that, you know, uh, a lot of times, like, early on, children are going through like trauma, and that trauma will stay and manifest if it's not addressed. And as a lot of y'all know, that's like a part of my dissertation and my PhD program is talking about, adverse childhood experiences and its direct correlation to incarceration. You know, our incarcerated population is our most traumatized population. They are behind bars. And it's not saying that people who aren't behind bars aren't traumatized. No, it's just saying that we see 98% of incarcerated individuals as of the year 2018, 98% of them have experienced one or more adverse childhood experience. And so we just see a collection of trauma. And trauma, it'll manifest in multiple ways. It even reshapes the brain. It can take away parts of the brain. um Long story short, folks, before like getting off of my nerd soapbox, is um mental health, it's so much more important. The person that you're seeing, they're not crazy. Oh, I can't believe they're acting like that. What if they don't have that part of their brain that helps regulate? What if they don't have that? Because trauma at an early age, it literally, um, there's parts of the brain that just will not grow unless there's treatment and intervention and healing. And so
Hmm.
it's like, let's let's move away from the, oh, they're crazy, I can't believe they're to a more, what can we as a society do to help? Like, what can we do to help rather than just, oh, they're crazy, or, oh, wow, they're weak for, feeling this way. How are they going to cry over that? Like, mental health is something we all have, and we don't want to it to impact us when it's quote unquote too late for us to do something. I noticed that our
Yeah.
society in general, and which tends to happen with a lot of first world societies, they're more reactive than proactive. Like it takes
Hmm.
something, and that's just a common thread. No shame, literally no shame on anyone. I'm just saying like that is a common observation that we see, that more first world societies overall tend to be more reactive than proactive. Reactive folks just basically means something, basically, there's a reaction when something is too late. Proactive means the prevention before something happens. Like we're noticing the signs. And so I would like to see that. And then the third thing is so y'all know I'm a suicide attempt survivor, but I've actually, Lisa, when I was 15, I actually completed suicide and I got to die and go on the other side. And I call it the other side. Some people call it heaven. I think that word is way too limiting for the amazement and the vastness that is on the other side. So I call it the other side or eternity. That's the best human words I can get for it. But it was just beautiful, amazing, loving, and that's what kicked off my healing journey. So in one of my poems, I say that dying saved my life. And obviously, those two statements kind of are just like, what? That doesn't make sense, But yeah, dying saved my life. I committed suicide, went on the other side, and I learned so much. I experienced so much. It is nothing but love and beauty. Um, and the reason why I'm mentioning this, it's going to tie back to mental health, is I did not realize until I came back from the other side, until I got brought back to life. I did not realize that what I was going through at home was trauma. I didn't realize that I wasn't being loved until I went on the other side. So on the other side, that's when I was like, wow, like this is love? What? I thought at home was love. That was not love at all. That was nothing but abuse, trauma, and all of that trauma, it long thankfully I went to therapy, got treatment and intervention medication, but I don't want to say it was too late because it wasn't. But had it been caught earlier, had I got treatment and intervention earlier, I would not be in the same like predicament that I was in with my healing journey. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay,
Sure.
good, good, good. So yeah, so all that trauma, of course, affected my mental health. So I've been diagnosed with PTSD, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and then I was misdiagnosed with BPD. It turns out it's just autism. Um, but all that to say is that abuse and trauma, especially early on, that damaged my brain, that did some restructuring. There are certain parts of the brain that didn't fully develop. Now, people can't tell unless I tell them that parts of the my brain wasn't fully developed. It was more so developed for survival,
Hmm.
um, not necessarily for living. And so, all that to say is like there are some things that my whole childhood, like I thought it was fine. And then all of a sudden, boom, here comes depression. Here comes suicidal thoughts just all at once. And I now know, based off research and things like that, that it was my body just trying to purge out all of the trauma. It was trying to just get it out. And that's the thing is like, I think it's really cool of our body to love us enough to purge out what it's not needing. However, it doesn't know how to do that in the best ways sometimes. And so we see trauma manifest in a multitude of ways: addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction, um, perpetrating the abuse that was happened to them. Let's see, depression, suicidal ideations, suicide attempts, incarceration. We see trauma manifest in multitude of ways, and it can also be in ways they're just like, oh, like I'm I have it can be like small wage that are still huge, but like, oh, having extreme stage fright or being extremely shy or extremely introverted. Yes, that could be someone's personality, but it can also be directly correlated to trauma and from childhood. And so the reason why I mention all this is to say like trauma affects obviously the mental health, which we see can oftentimes manifest into, suicide. um it needs to be talked about. It's so complex. It's not this black and white thing like, oh, just be happy, oh, just get over it. That's not how the brain works. That's not how the body works. And I talk about the brain a lot, but also our nervous system is our second brain that remembers so much. So it's like I had to learn, like, yeah, like I gotta get, mental health for my brain, but also my body as well. My body as well. And another fun, not fun fact, but another fact before I shut up is, you know, um, trauma can and mental health can manifest into cancer. That is also one of the ways, a heart disease. And so it's really scary, the studies. And I don't think enough studies have been done. I think there should be more because I think this needs to be out there more. But we so happily easily talk about cancer, right? A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, that cancer is directly correlated to childhood abuse. That is another thing that's stigmatized and that we need to, talk about more. Um, so yeah, like the body keeps score. It really keeps score. And something that I'm also learning to integrate, Lisa, I feel like now I'm at a stage where I now am ready to and am seeing the importance of connecting my body and my brain together. Because for a while I spoke of mental health as if it was like, it's as if my head was like 6 feet from my body, just floating above my body, when really it's all connected. It's all connected. And I learned, I don't want to say the hard way, but I learned because um I've had psychosomatic illnesses. And folks, if you don't know what psychosomatic is, it's basically when your mind is in so much distress that your body gets physically sick and you start developing symptoms. Now, if you go get an x-ray, you go to the doctors, they're not going to see anything physically wrong with your body. Like, just looking at it and through x-rays, nothing's going to be wrong with your body, but it's still there. It's because it's coming from the brain. So, mental health, folks, is very important. It's very, very, very important. I've just done so much. I have to do all this research. I don't know everything. I don't want to know everything, but I do know a lot because this is my field of study. But I don't know everything, folks. I'm not necessarily like an Albert Einstein, but I am very passionate about this. And what I learned has been very enlightening and very scary. What's scary about it is the stigma. I was like, there's all these there's all these complex intersectionalities and connections. And I was like, but I've heard so many times society put this kind of like black and white statement on it. And it's just like, it is not that. It is so complex. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is, Lisa, I loved what you had mentioned when you spoke about grieving and also how suicide, affecting folks um, that were connected to that person, how that like affects it. I think that's so powerful to mention because that's not something that I necessarily mention. Not something I necessarily think about. I'm always focused on the individual and how society could have prevented it, how things could have been prevented. Did they receive enough love? Did they receive this, And oftentimes, I mean, not often, but a lot of times they did. But I, I more so focus on um, the outcast. the ones who didn't receive the love and things like that. Of course, focus on all of them, but I definitely, have more of a focus on the ones who didn't receive the love. Why? Because see myself in them. So I'm just kind of like naturally, more have more of a focus on that. So I love that you brought these other perspectives to it about the grieving and how folks around, you said 135 people per
For
7 people that commit suicide.
for every one person who takes their life, 135 people are impacted. Those are the people we live with, the people we work with, our friends, our family. So the average for every human who takes their life, and there are over 700,000 of them around the world every year,
Mhm.
the average is 135 people are impacted by that one suicide.
Mhm.
And when you do that math, it's 94 million
Mhm.
people a year who are touched by suicide.
Yeah,
But I want to give you another fact because you said you nerded out before and I want to nerd back at you
please do.
because this is something that I don't know if you're aware of the statistic, and I'm sure the only reason why I'm aware of it is because I'm on the crisis lifelines through
Mhm.
the Trevor Project. And we are, for those who don't know what the Trevor Project is, we are the largest
Oh,
crisis and support lifeline
wait,
for.
Lisa, isn't the current I put a post on that because the current administration's trying to, did it
No,
try
they've
or
done
did it
it. They've
actually
already
did? Oh
they
no.
so here's what happened.
Oh no.
Here's what happened, and then I'll tell you the statistic. So let me explain first what the Trevor Project is. For those who don't know, we are the largest LGBTQ focused crisis and support hotline for at-risk youth ages 13 to 24. So what has just happened within the past month, maybe month and a half, is that the federal government did away with the specialized services LGBTQ line on the 988 crisis and suicide hotline. So if you're someone who's in crisis and you're part of the queer community and you were one of those people who was calling 988, you pick up the phone and you dial 988 because you're in crisis, you have the ability, anyone who dials 988 has the ability to select certain options on that line to go to a specific kind of crisis counselor. Well, if you select option 3, used to be if you selected option 3, you would go to a crisis counselor like me who was trained to have conversations with people who are part of the queer community. So we understand the language, we understand the situations, we in a lot of cases have personal lived experience. And so the Trevor Project, where I volunteer, we were the people who were getting those calls when people called 988 and dialed option 3. Those calls were routed to us for specialized care. The federal government, probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, shut that line down. People can still call 988 and get generalized care. People can still call a separate number. If you want to reach the Trevor Project, you call 866-488-7386 and you'll get a crisis counselor like me. But there is no longer a bridge between the 988 number that will take you to the Trevor Project. You have to go to each of those separately. And it just creates a bigger and more unfortunate barrier to
Exactly.
the people getting the kind of specialized help that they need. But the one statistic that I wanted to give you that I think is so powerful in this conversation
Mm.
has to do with the queer community and has to do with LGBTQ youth who are in crisis. We talk about the power of sharing
Mhm.
our stories and our pain and being vulnerable with people. We talk about the impact of having one single human being there to listen to someone who's in crisis. The stat I want to give you is that for every one person who shows up to listen to an LGBTQ youth who is in crisis, just by having one person listen to them, it reduces the risk or likelihood of them taking their life by suicide by 40%.
Mm.
So it's huge.
40%. That is huge.
Whether that person is a family member, a crisis counselor, a therapist, a
Mhm.
friend, a colleague, if you're listening to someone, and this statistic I think is more relevant in the queer community, I'm not entirely sure what it is for just youth in crisis to have someone else there to listen, but I know that it's 40% less likely that someone in the queer community will take their life if they have a counselor or a friend or a human there to listen to them.
Mm, wow. Powerful, powerful
Mm,
statistic. The importance of being heard, being listened to, not being judged, not being told, oh, just be happy,
it's
or
not that easy. It's not that easy.
exactly. I remember they used to tell me that. I'm like, oh, no way. I didn't know. You're a genius. I didn't know, 40%. 40%.
It's a
Wow.
big number.
That is a big number. So it's very, very, very important to just be that listening ear. And I do want to mention, because I don't want to sound like I'm shaming anyone. I get like sometimes, people they're just trying to do their best, and so they say, "Oh, just be happy." They're just trying to do their best. Um I get it. I mean, they're trying to do their best. I mean, I don't agree with it. I guess because how I've been shown that in my life, it was not shown through like those words mostly didn't come from people trying to do their best and be loving. It was coming from people that were supposed to do their best and be loving, but there was not the care for me. And then a couple times it was followed up with, "Oh, you should just kill yourself then." Yes, my
Oh,
my family is not the yeah, I do not have the best mother, father, brother. I don't family in general. I just don't. So I mean, in fact, the first time I heard someone tell me to kill myself, it came from family.
I'm so sorry. No one should ever hear that.
No one should ever hear that. And mind you, I did not know that I didn't know that that wasn't love until, I went to the other side, and then I just got really enlightened on what love actually is and things like that. And so, however, the reason I mention this is to say that, um, back then, if I had one person listen, I know it would have made a difference. I can still feel it to this day that if one person listened back then, it would have made a huge difference.
It most likely would have.
Oh yeah, like I know for a fact. Yes, I could, cuz I remember um cuz I was so vulnerable. I was in a vulnerable, just state, just so I loved hearing that statistic. I did not know that statistic. And
Mm.
thank you for sharing that statistic.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. I think it's important that people recognize
hmm,
what holding space, the simple act of holding space can really do and
yeah,
the power in doing that one selfless act.
yes. I do have another question for you.
Mhm.
So, how much we? Okay, good. We got 15 minutes, so we're good. We're good. Okay. So, what is if you want to share, you do not have to share boundaries. We respect it on here. What has suicide impacted you? Because you had mentioned earlier that, um, about your podcast, which folks, it will be in the episode description below. Please check it out. Um, that you are a survivor of s- suicide loss. Did I say that right?
You did say that
Oh,
right. Mhm.
okay. Can
Yep.
you tell us a
Nailed
little bit
nailed it.
about that? What's your story with that?
Absolutely. There's nothing that relates to my story that I won't share. So I appreciate you asking the question. So for me, I've lost 3 people that I care about to suicide. One of those is my father. That one was a very unusual kind of loss. So my very first experience losing anyone at all came when I was 9 years old, and I lost my cousin who lived up the street. I was 9, he was 18. He took his life. I was aware of that even that young. My parents found a way to tell me what had actually happened in as much as they could tell me without it being overwhelming for me to understand.
Mhm.
And so I became a survivor at a very young age. And the following year, when I turned 10, my father passed away very, very suddenly to what I was told was a heart attack. And even though my father was an extremely healthy man, so full of life, so energetic, so present, loving, all the things, he was also a big smoker.
Mhm.
So the fact that he had died of a heart attack was not something that was hard for me to understand. It just was not something that I could question. I had the need to question. There was no other obvious reason why he would have died any other way. And so that's what I believed for 35 years
Mhm.
until I turned 45 myself. And that was the same age that my father passed away. And shortly after my own 45th birthday, I discovered by accident that my father had taken his life. He had died by suicide all along. So I've grieved my father twice. You talk about grief, and we talked in the beginning of this conversation all about grief. I have a very unique kind of grief that I deal with, which is called reverse grief, which is you're now dealing with grieving in reverse, something that you understood to be one way that is now not that way. And there are so many implications to this new revelation of the way that my father died. It became the difference between my father being completely out of control of dying by a heart attack
Mhm.
to all of a sudden my father being in complete control of choosing to end his own life. And so that was just like a mind shift of such epic proportion to my brain and my life that it took years for me to even find my footing again, to even
Mhm.
be able to talk about it again, to even really kind of process it in a way that I understood it to be true. And so that was the second loss. And about 4.5 years ago, I mentioned that my husband and I have been together for, married for 32 years, been together for almost 40 years. One of our closest childhood friends, 4.5 years ago, passed away. He took his life very, very unexpectedly. No one saw it coming. And so that experience combined with the other two experiences of losing people I love that way changed me. It changed my life. It changed my perspective on life and grief and loss and death and suicide. And I always had this belief system growing up that just in my own little brain, that suicide was a very selfish act, which is a super common belief system. And then it was only after I learned that my own father had taken his life that it became very obvious to me almost overnight how ill-informed I was about mental illness, how misunderstood I was, and that it was not my father's fault, and that my father felt like he had no choice, and my father was in such unbelievable pain that he was concealing and keeping from the world and masking every day that no one knew. And he didn't feel like he lived in a world where
Mhm.
he could let that out to the general
Mhm.
population or even to my mom, who was so supportive. They had this beautiful marriage. But for whatever reason, my father didn't reach out and didn't let anyone know that anything was wrong. So if you don't know something is broken, you can't really fix it, can you?
Mhm.
So that was my experience. And it was almost immediate that I learned about my own father's suicide, that just created a complete shift,
Mhm.
like a seismic shift in the way that I understood mental illness. And I no longer felt that it was selfish.
Yeah.
I actually, in some ways, was almost ashamed of myself for thinking of it as a selfish act because I realized that it's completely beyond someone's control. Their brain is not their own anymore. Their actions are not rational anymore. They are in so much pain that the only thing on their mind is not being in pain anymore. And the only agency they have left to help themselves
Mhm.
is to take their own life so they're not in pain anymore. So that's my experience with suicide.
Mhm.
That's what it has done to me and to my life, and how it's shaped and reshaped the work that I do and the way I show up in the world. And it's because of that that I got on Crisis Lifelines, because I wanted to be the person on the phone who was taking those calls from the people who were feeling like my dad was feeling. But they now live in a world where you can pick up and dial 3 digits and get someone on the phone to hold the space and to listen and to offer help. So it's why I do every bit of the work that I do now. And it's why I will always do this work as long as I possibly can.
You okay? Thank you for sharing, Lisa. There's two things that you had mentioned that I wanted to touch on. So one, I love how beautifully you articulated and verbalized and communicated um, the transition from thinking suicide as something selfish to now realizing, okay, actually, it is not that, and it's so complex and things of that nature. I loved how well you've put that because I completely agree with you. I just did not know how to verbalize it as good as you did. So thank you for how you verbalized it.
Of course.
That was very, very beautifully put, and it was very validating, to someone's what they were going through. It was just very validating and not invalidating, them and their experiences. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Another thing, uh, I like what you said. Another thing that you articulated very well, you had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had mentioned, your father possibly not, um, f- feel pro- possibly not, feeling that the world was safe to even talk about things like this. Um, and that is so true. Safety is so important to, and that's something that I often just assume is there. Because I've now been so privileged in safety, coming from unsafe to now just safety. I've been so privileged, so now I just assume safety and don't mention it because I just assume it's there for people to talk about. But safety is so important. It is so important. So I'm very grateful that you had mentioned that, as it has humbled and reminded me to mention safety because safety is very important. And back then, I know this podcast is heard in 53 countries, but I could say back then in America, and it's still a little bit like that to this day, but back then in America, there's these things, folks, that were not talked about. They were not talked about. That whole be a man, it was so heavily just, I mean, it was the society back then, the roles being fitting in certain roles. Um,
There were so many stereotypes back
yeah,
then, unfortunately.
exactly. And so I wonder, I mean, I mean, wow, like yeah, like that is so true. And now, there are these phone lines, these hotlines that you can call. It's a little bit more talked about in society, but there are still folks out there that, you know, within their household, like the environment might be safe, but the household might not be safe. Um, and so that can like prohibit someone, especially like if they've shared a little bit just to test to see the reaction and it was met with unsupport, invalidation, or mm, misunderstanding, things of that nature. Folks, I want, if that is you or if that is someone I want you to know that the hotlines are safe. I'm a huge advocate for the hotlines. Call 988 or call the and or call the Trevor Project. Folks, I'll put the 988 and the Trevor Project in the episode description below. I'll put their phone number in just in case. I don't know if you need it. Um,
I think that there are people who might benefit, and you tell me what you think.
Okay.
There are people who might be listening to this conversation who might benefit from the fact that I am the person who is likely to answer a phone call, could answer a phone call. And there could be so many people out there who have maybe been at a desperate point. Maybe they don't have support. Maybe they can't afford therapy. Maybe they just don't know where to turn.
Mhm.
And they're terrified to call a
Yeah,
lifeline because
you're
they don't know what to expect.
right.
You tell me, do you think it's worth me sharing in 60 seconds or less what someone will encounter so that they are less afraid to pick up the phone and call?
You have way more than 60 seconds. I'm looking at my planner. My next appointment is until 1:40 p.m.
Oh, okay.
So
So I have
I
time.
thought it was 1 p.m. It's 1:40 p.m. I do apologize. So
Okay.
no, you have
No,
plenty of
that's
time.
okay. No, 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 that's okay. I think it's probably worth it because I know that there are a lot of people. I talk to people on the daily who call lifelines, who are calling for the first time, who
Mhm.
are terrified, and who have maybe called and hung up and called and hung up or shopped around for a counselor's voice that they thought felt appropriate or they connected with, and they just don't know what to expect. A lot of people think if I call a lifeline and I say that I'm not okay, well then the first responders are going to bust down my door and I'm going to be sectioned in a hospital in a
Mhm.
psych ward. And people don't know what they should expect. So if you're listening and you're struggling and you don't know where to turn and you're worried about a lifeline, don't be worried about a lifeline. We are here to do a number of different things. First of all, we're there to have the conversation that you need to have, whatever that conversation may be. We will not judge you. We will not shame you. We will not criticize you. We're there to support you. We're there to listen. It's your conversation. You get to structure that, share that, experience that in whatever way suits you. We're there to support wherever you are in that moment. So, yeah, we're going to ask you some hard questions. Be prepared. In the first 5 minutes, we're going to say to you, are you thinking of killing yourself? And we're going to use very direct language on whatever hotline you call because, first and foremost, we need to make sure it is a suicide hotline.
Mhm.
And even though anybody with any kind of mental illness or challenge or crisis is welcome to call, you don't have to just be suicidal
Mhm.
to call.
Right.
But oftentimes people think they do. Well, that's not true. That's a myth. You can call if you've had a bad breakup or if you're
Mhm.
grieving or if you lost your job or you're experiencing homelessness or food insecurity or you're being abused. You can call a hotline for anything. But we are going to check in on you and say, okay, are you thinking of killing yourself or harming yourself? And if you're honest and you say yes, we're going to ask, have you done anything today to try and harm yourself? When were you thinking about harming yourself? How were you thinking about harming yourself? We're going to ask you these questions, and those are based on the idea that the more information we have about what you're thinking, the better we can help you. And then once we find out kind of that baseline of like, yes, I'm suicidal, or yes, I've been having ideation, or yes, I have a plan, we're going to go one way with the conversation, or we're going to go another. Maybe we go the other way and we say, okay, well, you're thinking this. Who's there right now? Who do you have for support? Do you have a therapist? Do you feel like you need to go to the hospital? We'll go that route. If you're saying, no, I'm just really in a terrible mood. I feel shitty. I don't know what to do. I'm depressed. Well, okay, let's come up with a safety plan. Let's talk about ways that you can get support. Let's talk about things that you can do to help get yourself re-regulated. And that's the kind of conversation that we'll have. So
Mm.
I think it's worth just reminding people who may not know
Mhm.
that we're there to support you. We're going to be non-judgmental. We're there to help you in whatever ways you need help. And you can call us for any reason that you need support.
Yeah, I love that. You taught me some things.
Great.
Um, you taught me some things about um because like yeah, like you can even call if you had a bad breakup.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because that's a
It's
crisis
a
for you.
crisis, yeah.
And the way you think about it is, okay, it's a suicide and crisis lifeline, but
Mhm.
people tend to just cue in on the word
Suicide.
suicide and think, well, if I'm just having a problem with a friend and I'm in a really bad headspace or my dog just died or I just lost my job, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I have a family to support. People don't think about calling a lifeline a suicide line for those issues. But Those are exactly the issues that you should call and talk to somebody about, especially if you don't have a therapist, especially if you don't have maybe family support. There are a lot of people who don't have a partner or a spouse or
Mhm.
friends to lean on. And
Right.
so that's one of the reasons why we're there, to fill
Yes.
in that gap.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And one other thing that's worth mentioning is that here in the United States,
Mhm.
we have the 988 crisis lifeline.
Mhm.
There, almost every country in the world has their own lifeline. So it may be a three-digit number, it may not be a three-digit number, but one of the things that I've done on my platform, the Help Hub, there is an international resource button, and if you press that button on the homepage, you'll go to a listing of international resources, and one of the resources on that page is a listing of, not all, I'm working on it, but the majority of those country numbers. So if you're in Japan right now and you don't know what your crisis lifeline is, maybe you're an expat and you're living in another country and you don't know what the lifeline is, well, you can find it. Go to the helphub.co, click on the international tab, and there is a listing of all of them. So find out the number where you are in the world, because obviously people are listening to you all over the planet. And so you want to make sure that you have the access to the information and the resources and services that you need where you are in that moment. So you can find them easily. I know on the Help Hub, and I know that when people just have that in their phone and they don't have to worry about where to search for it when they need it most, you're in a better position to help yourself when you need to be helped.
So amazing. I start tearing up. That is so
Oh,
amazing. No, that really is so amazing. Because I actually started thinking about that. I was like, this podcast is heard in many places. Like, you know,
hmm
what about them? But you recognize, you recognize them. That's so beautiful. And so that will be, um, so send me, folks. I got to talk to Lisa about something about the links after, but any links that Lisa sends me, it will be in the episode description below. And folks, I like to end with a little challenge. But before I do, Lisa, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, I mean, I think we covered so much important ground. We
Mm.
kind of created an open, safe space to have the hard conversations, and now everybody who listened understands why. We all have a responsibility to be vulnerable and to talk about the things that aren't often talked about, because that's how we normalize them all. So we've done that already, and I'm grateful to you for that, and I'm grateful to whomever it is that's been listening to us for listening. But the only thing I would say is, if you're not okay, you owe it to yourself to tell someone that you're not okay. And there is always someone to go to, even if you are one of those people who doesn't have a partner or a family or friends or an immediate support system. There is always a number that you can call in any country. We've already talked about it. They're out there. I have the numbers. You can always find someone who will listen and hold space and offer the help that you need. So you are never alone. And the way that you feel right now, if you're not okay, is not the way you'll always feel.
Beautiful, beautiful. Folks, I like to end with a little challenge. Let's see, let's change it up a bit. Tell one to two people that you are thankful for them.
One to two. Okay. Can I say four? I have
Well,
to
yeah,
say
do as
four.
much as you want. The only reason why I say 1, 2 is because I know some people have social anxiety, and I just wanna, be like,
No,
"Okay,
I
so
have
it's
no
not too
social anxiety, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. So I can't say my mother without saying my husband, and I can't say my husband without saying both of my daughters.
much."
So my mom Sandy, my husband Dave, my daughter Libby, and my daughter Riley. I mean, they're my dream team. What can I tell you? I'm so lucky that, I'm in my office right now and my mother is on the other side of the wall. And I'm so fortunate, after everything she's been through, I've been through, we've been through, that she is here and we get to support each other. I mean, my mother held that secret of my father's suicide for 35 years to protect me. And now I get to hold all the space in the world for her. And so I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. I'm surviving because of her, and my husband the same. I mean, he has been the absolute ultimate rock and safe harbor for me since we were 17 years old. And I'm gifted that my two daughters are my best friends in the world. So I'm grateful to them, and I can't shout anybody out in the world without shouting them out.
Well, that's beautiful. I love that, folks. I love that. Thank you, Lisa. And folks, these 1 to 2 people can of course be more. I'm glad Lisa mentioned that. Um, but that also includes yourself, folks. Lisa, thank you. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for you.
I appreciate you right back.
Yes, need you to know that. Okay, alrighty, folks. So remember to check out links in the episode description below. And I'll add a couple numbers in there as well as anything Lisa sends me. So yes, take a look, check it out, and I will see y'all next episode for whatever that will be. Alrighty, bye folks. Love ya. Get on out of here.